Mass Effect. The world, the characters, the lore, the story, I love it all. I think it's fair to say that Mass Effect is my most favourite game series to come out of BioWare. Like many Mass Effect fans, I was excited for the next instalment of the franchise. So after it's been out for several months and updated with several patches, what do I think of Mass Effect Andromeda? It's okay. Mass Effect Andromeda is the next installment in the Mass Effect franchise from the game's producer BioWare. Andromeda is a sort of a standalone Mass Effect game. While having some connections to the trilogy, it isn't an outright sequel. Set 634 years away from the Milky Way, you are part of the Andromeda Initiative, a group that has set out with a goal to find a new home in the Andromeda Galaxy, a feat never before done. But when the Golden Worlds that were meant to be home for thousands of people, can no longer sustain life, and a new enemy, the Ket, is on the horizon, everything seems in doubt. You are the Pathfinder. Your job is to find out why the Golden Worlds have all but died out, while help settle people in new homes. You have to build alliances between the Nexus and the Angara, a species of alien native to the Helios cluster. All the while trying to find the missing Arks and other Pathfinders, try to keep the peace and find out why the Ket want to possess mysterious monoliths that seem to hold more than meets the eye. The main story of Andromeda is a simple one, but one that I think is poorly paced. If you're not careful, you could complete this game within the space of about 3 to 4 hours. You feel the need to pad out the story between main missions to extend the playthrough, but at the same time, there isn't a sense of urgency to complete the main game. Missions in general have a good range to them. You have combat missions that have a good flow with enemies that don't feel like they absorb too much damage and thus don't prolong the fight. You have fetch quest missions that are a good chance to have a relaxing drive in the Nomad, and dialogue missions that can allow you to solve problems without having to resort to a gunfight. Loyalty missions have a nice variety to them, all unique and help flesh out the characters related to that mission. Task missions are where I believe the game lags. Task missions can feel like busy work, going from one place to the next can drag on a bit, but they do pay off when you see that these tasks also help with the viability of planets and colonies. Unfortunately, choices in this game are lacking in substance, meaning that whatever choice you make has very little impact or consequence to the main story. You don't feel much negative effects of the choice you might make, except for maybe in a few missions. Paragon and Renegade may have been removed from the game to make Ryder feel less like Shepard, but tough choices are what makes a Mass Effect game overall. Andromeda also brings 3 new races of alien to the table: the Angara, the Ket, and the Remnant. Out of the 3, I did find the Angara to be more compelling and more interesting as a race, simply because we learn more about them by reading through the lore or by talking to the NPCs that are scattered throughout the game. The Remnant are certainly more mysterious of the 3, as we don't really find out much about them except for their connection to the monoliths and the worlds that you are able to visit. The Ket, on the other hand, are somewhat of an average enemy. You can figure out their origin as you play through the game, and they don't give much of a presence. They don't have the spice that the Reapers did in the trilogy. They still hold a bit of mystery in terms of where they come from and why they do what they do. Overall, the story of Andromeda is certainly one that can suck you in, even though poorly paced. You get engrossed in the world around you, the lore that you can find, and the missions that you are able to do. Like every BioWare game, Andromeda has a vast range of compelling characters. Let's start off with the main character, Ryder. We'll start by saying that Ryder is no Shepard. Unlike Shepard, Ryder doesn't have a background he or she can draw from, no experience in dealing with certain situations that could arise. Andromeda is Ryder's origin story. The choices you make in terms of dialogue and the missions you do paved the path for Ryder to take their journey down. In a way, Ryder is somewhat of a blank slate, perfect for newcomers to the Mass Effect series to get used to, while old fans are not getting more of the same. The only problem I have with Ryder is that it seemed that the default emotion for Ryder was snarky or sarcastic. You could say that because Ryder has no experience, he or she chooses to cover it up with humour, but after a while it gets annoying and grating. Sam the AI, while not as lively as Edie, is a charming character all his own. Sam grows alongside Ryder, learning from the decisions and the experiences you make throughout the game. Like Ryder, Sam is very much a blank slate, but I hope that this character continues to grow and evolve if BioWare chooses to continue the Andromeda series. Cora is Ryder's second-in-command. Cora holds the Asari in high regard ever since the Alliance sent her to join and train with the Asari commandos because of her biotics, making her highly disciplined, but this does make her seem like a cold and standoffish character. Cora also has her own hang-ups about being passed over for the position of Pathfinder, but through the game has to come to terms with it as she tries to find out where her place is. Liam is a guy who wants to do good, but every time he tries something, it messes up. In a way, he rushes ahead without thinking of the consequences of his actions, but he does learn from his mistakes. You see this especially in his loyalty mission. Vetra is a merc with some black market connections. Anything you need, she can get. A good combatant with a sharp tongue, Vetra is a good Turian to have at your side. But underneath that hard exterior, Vetra really cares for her baby sister Sid. Due to a harsh life in her early years, Vetra had to grow up fast, and her only focus was to find a home for Sid. Drac is a grizzled old Krogan who refuses to die. On the surface, Drac looks like he's the basic Krogan formula, tough but lovable, much like Rex and Grunt. But in my opinion, Drac is a great character to talk about depression. As we get to know Drac, we learn that he is more prosthetic than Krogan, and at one point in his life, his body began to reject the implants and prosthetics that he needed to live. So he took to drugs to ease the pain, wallowing in his state, not knowing how to break free, until his granddaughter Kesh was placed in his lap. Drac learned to drag himself out of the gutter and live, maybe not for himself, but for Kesh. PB is a whirlwind of crazy, always trying to look for adventure and the next remnant site where she can get to some new tech. She's quirky and spunky, but also afraid of getting attached or too close to other people, just in case they might hurt her. Jarl is Ryder's and the player's gate into the Angaran world and culture. He gives you some insight into how the Angaran behave and how they hold family in high regard. Jarl also has a thirst to learn more about the Milky Way, often asking other team members about their culture, or in some cases having a joke at their expense. The only problem with Jarl is that he is evidence of trying to catch lightning in a bottle twice. The creators of the game have made Jarl a diet Garrus, with the similarities being hard to ignore once seen. There are other characters on the Tempest that the player can talk to and get closer to as well, each having their own stories to tell. There are many other characters in the game that have interesting stories and conflicts, like the Moshai, the other Pathfinders, the Nexus Council members, and lest we forget, my face is tired Addison. The combat in Andromeda is very fast-paced, with the added momentum of the jump jet allowing you to hover or quickly dodge or jump over obstacles. Combat has a very different feel to it than previous Mass Effect games. Whereas previous games felt very rigid, Andromeda's combat flows almost effortlessly. This combat system works especially well against super bosses of the game, making the player have to think quickly in order to survive. The added addition of the profiles was an interesting concept, the concept being able to change from one class to another, for example going from being an infiltrator to a vanguard. But what I found myself using less and less as I played through the game. Eventually I found a rhythm that I was comfortable with and was effective against the Ket and other enemies you may face, so I found myself forgetting that I had different profiles uploaded. The environments for this game are absolutely gorgeous, especially on planets like Kavarl. The Frostbite engine does not let us down in this department. The way that the neon colours pop from the dark and the rain that lands on the armour and the characters is a treat to see. But also how even presumed bland deserts like Eladon and Vold are amazing to drive the Nomad through. The open world game does take a while to get used to, especially after the trilogy was such a linear game, but the payoff is worth it to drive around these environments. Speaking of the Nomad, the exploration part of the game really does take you back to the days of Mass Effect 1, driving over the mountains and racing across the flats. But while no Thrasher Moors burst from the ground to give you a nice surprise, the Nomad is a good chance to get to know your team better as they have short and sometimes funny conversations. Another element to Andromeda's gameplay are the vaults. Each vault you enter is different. One might focus more on combat while the other might focus more on puzzle solving. This can give players a welcome break and doesn't allow the game to focus too heavily on combat. Some puzzles I found were harder than others, and I wouldn't blame people for looking for the solution on YouTube. The environments in the vault are also amazing to see. You really get a sense of a vast alien space. The crafting in Andromeda is one of the best I've seen from BioWare in a while. Resources can be scarce, but this makes the player think about what they might need instead of upgrading and crafting items at a fast pace. The only complaint I have with this is I wish it was a bit more streamlined, but once you get used to it, everything is pretty easy to find. I also found that through upgrading and buying new weapons, you quickly build a backlog. This could have been helped if you were allowed to equip companion characters, similar to Mass Effect 3, with spare weapons you collect. But instead they can either be broken down into their base elements or sold for more credit. The character creation is, in my opinion, the weakest and most bare-bones character creation BioWare has ever produced for a game. Unlike others where you could customise the look so that it feels more personal to you, this character creation only allows you to manipulate certain features, keeping you very entrapped within the base design. The base designs themselves have improved with updated patches, also adding one or two more options in to choose from, but it still has that uncanny valley feeling to them. One thing that I think the game misses out on is the chance to play as a different race from the Mass Effect universe. You still could have kept the same premise for the game, a family trying to make a life for themselves in a totally new galaxy while dangers hit them from every corner. But instead of playing as a human, you could have played as a Turian, Solarian or Asari. This might have helped to bring about a new perspective to the game, or even deal with different issues that might arise due to the character being a different council race. For example, if the main character was a Turian, it might have been harder to get an alliance with the Krogan. Overall, Mass Effect Andromeda is a fun game. The combat is swift and effective. The story, while poorly paced, it's intriguing and fun to immerse yourself into. The characters are compelling and complex. Andromeda is a good game to welcome new players to the franchise, as it's not too closely tied to the original trilogy, and being a standalone game. This also allows new players to see the wonder BioWare can bring to a world like Mass Effect. Yet, for returning fans of the franchise, it brings something familiar and new to the table. It's a decent Mass Effect story of a young Pathfinder trying to find their own way in a crazy galaxy. Old fans will also notice the small callbacks to the trilogy that are scattered throughout the game. A sort of fun Easter egg hunt. Is Andromeda as good as the trilogy? It has potential. This is a good start to base the building blocks of a brand new trilogy. I give Mass Effect Andromeda a 6 out of 10. Even with all the recent patches to the game, it's a good game that can fill a void. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of my content, subscribe. If you'd like to support me further, I have a Patreon link. Any help you could give will be greatly appreciated. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye!